Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Bookstore's virtual event series. My name is Noah Mintz, and I'm the event coordinator at the bookstore. Community is celebrating over 50 years in business, and we credit the continued support of readers and writers for this milestone. So thank you for spending the evening with us. I'm thrilled today to welcome Mónica Ojeda and translator Sarah Booker for the release of Jawbone, out now from Coffee House Press. Some housekeeping before I introduce our guests. We've enabled Zoom's auto transcription setting, so if your version of Zoom is up to date, hit the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen to enable closed captions. If you have any questions for tonight's guests, please click on the Q&A button, which is also at the bottom of your screen. We'll be asking those at the end of the program, so please don't be shy. There's also a chat box through which I will be posting a link to buy tonight's book if you haven't already. And one caveat for tonight is that we're all at the mercy of our home internet connections. So if there are any technical issues that arise, please bear with us. We'll resolve them quickly. We have a great lineup of events planned for you at Community Bookstore, so head over to our website, communitybookstore.net, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. Two that I'd like to point out in particular are this Saturday, February 19th. We're thrilled to welcome Nobel laureate Olga Tokarczuk and Booker International Prize-winning translator Jennifer Croft for the Books of Jacob in conversation with Rabi El-Hamidine. And on Wednesday, February 23rd, we'll be joined by Alejandro Zambra and translator Megan McDowell for a discussion of Zambra's new novel, Chilean Poet. Those programs are up on our website now and taking registrations. Now, a little about tonight's guests, and with apologies for my Spanish. Mónica Ojeda is the author of the novels La Desfiguración Silva, Nefando, and Mandíbula, as well as the poetry collections of Ciclo de las Piedras and Historia de la Leche. Her stories have been published in the anthology Emergencias, 12 Cuentos Iberoamericanos, and the collections Caninos and Los Voladoras. In 2017, she was included on the Bogota 39 list of the best 39 Latin American writers under 40. And in 2019, she received the Prince Claus Next Generation Award in honor of her outstanding literary achievements. And Sarah Booker is a doctoral candidate at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, with a focus on contemporary Latin American narrative and translation studies. She is a literary translator working from Spanish to English and has translated, among others, Cristina Rivera Garza's The Iliac Crest, and Grieving, Dispatches from a Wounded Country, and Mónica Ojeda's Jawbone. Her translations have also been published in journals such as the Paris Review, Asymptote, Latin American Literature Today, 3 AM Magazine, Nashville Review, Make, and Translation Review. So now, without any further ado, I will hand it off to you. Mónica, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah and the rest of the team at Community Books for having us. I want to start with a couple other thank yous. So thank you, Mónica, for being here. And then thank you also to the whole team at Coffee House Press for making this book happen. I want to especially thank Lucy Davis for her unbelievable and thorough editing, Erica Stevens for a lot of kind of behind the scenes work. And then we also wanted to thank and then we'll do another kind of short reading and then open things up for questions from the audience. I think maybe we'll start it off with a reading from the second chapter of Jawbone. I think, Mónica, you'll start.
I'll start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I want to apologize first because my English is very, very rusty. And so I'm going to make mistakes all the time. Please forgive me. and also I'm going to maybe ask Sarah a lot of times for help. So Sarah, please help me. Also, I want to thank you, Sarah, for making this happen. You know, you translated Jawbone, and I know that I didn't make it easy. So thank you so much for your amazing work. I think now Jawbone is it has two authors, me and you, and I want to also thanks to Coffee House Press and also Community Bookstore for the space and you know, for inviting me here. Hopefully I would be able to travel sometime to America and to the United States. hopefully, but now I just have to survive the COVID. So the COVID thing, hopefully then I will be able to travel. So then, okay, I'm going to read in Spanish a little bit of the second chapter, and then Sarah is going to write her amazing translation. So here it goes. Hola, mi nombre es Anne, y mi Dios es una luciérnaga escarchada, cantó Annelise meneándose con una mano en la cintura. Dice que es mi amante y usa tacones altos de aguja. Se pinta los labios para besarme en la garganta y bailarme una banambada roja cuando estoy triste. Su traje brilla en las madrugadas. Sus uñas arrastran los cadáveres de los insectos estrellados que sacó de mi cabeza. Si necesitan saberlo, lo conocí una noche sobre el escenario chico de mi habitación. Cruzó sus piernas y me lamió la axila con sus pestañas. Su vestido soltaba leche y diamantes negros, mientras arañaba los insectos más profundos de mi cráneo. Me llamó hija, y yo lo llamé madre por su sonrisa vaginal abierta de ojos. Me dijo, solo las caderas anchas pueden parir las dimensiones del universo. Sus pestañas levantaron toda la tierra mojada de mi corazón. Aprende, dijo, el padre de la creación es una madre que usa una peluca y huele a Dior.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to read the same passage and then a little bit more in English. All right, hi, my name is Anne. My God is a rhinestone encrusted firefly, Annelise is saying, swaying back and forth with one hand on her hip. He says he's my lover and he wears stilettos. He puts lipstick on to kiss my neck and dances a red lambada for me when I'm sad. His dress sparkles in the early morning. His nails drag the corpses of crushed insects that he pulled from my head. But you must know, I met him one night on the little stage in my bedroom. He crossed his legs and licked my armpit with his eyelashes. His dress dripped with black and milk diamonds while he clawed insects from deep within my skull. He called me daughter, and I called him mother for that wide-eyed pussy smile. He told me only broad hips can birth the dimensions of the universe. His eyelashes lifted all the wet earth from my heart. Take note, he said. The father of creation is a mother who wears a wig and smells of Dior. Fiorella and Natalia applauded as their friend recited on tiptoe, stirring up circles of bone-colored dust in the cement. Her back to a glassless window where pigeons had nestled until Analia accidentally startled them with her plump, sweaty hand. Leave him alone, Fernanda said, as she shook an aerosol can that reminded me of the Schwarzkopf extra strong hold hairspray her mom used on her hair. I can't help it. I want to touch them. Analia, stop. That's so nasty, Natalia screeched. Stop scaring them, Fiorella shouted. Do whatever the hell comes out of my ass. Oh yeah, what's coming out? Lift up your skirt and show us. Very funny. You have a horrible ass. Well, not as bad as yours. Stop it, I'm gonna pee my pants. The echo of their voices against the walls disturbed the geckos. Are they reptiles or amphibians? Natalia asked. They're lizards that look like toads, Fiorella answered while braiding her hair. There, they shouted louder than they did anywhere else, because with time, they discovered an enigmatic pleasure in speaking fiercely to each other when no one else was listening. As if deep down they were tired of good manners, as if raw friendship could only materialize among radiant shrieks at 4 in the afternoon. There.
Hey, that was really great. It's the first time I listened to it, you know.
Yeah.
I have read some passage that because of the book, but it's the first time I just listened to it in English. It's so strange.
I know, it's funny. I feel like we read it differently too.
Yeah, no, but it's amazing. Like I think it's I don't know any other language. I know Spanish and I know a little bit of English. And Jawbone has been translated to French and to Italian, Greek, and some other language is going to be translated very soon. And I just love the sound of you know, something that I have no idea, you know, what they're saying in Italian, but I love the sound, and now I can understand you, and also the sound is great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it must be a weird experience to have your book translated into a language that you can't read.
Yeah,
super
yeah,
carefully.
it's really strange. Yeah. Also, when we make the presentations like this in Zoom, or I went to touring like the last year. Also, I went to Italy, and when I met the readers of my book, that was even more strange. You know, people that I couldn't talk to because we don't share the same language, but
Mhm.
they have read something that is so important to me. You know, it's bizarre.
Yeah, and they feel like they know you as a writer so
Yeah,
well.
I think we know each other in some way, but we can't talk. You know, that is really strange. So I'm happy to be here because even though I'm going to talk very badly, we can talk. So
Exactly.
it's really good.
And you're not talking badly. So I guess to start the conversation, I was curious how you came to write Mandibula. What is
That's a very I think I have been thinking about writing a novel about fear and desire and violence. You know, I was actually very interested in writing in writing about how desire just puts you in a place in which you are you have a lot of strength, because you know desire is like you know a motor. I don't know how to say it in English. It just drives you and takes you to some places that you could never go if you weren't driven by that desire. But also desire makes you or puts you in a very vulnerable place, precisely because you are just like a volcano. You know, you are like kind of exploding, and also you are kind of making a mess of yourself in that place. So I believe that I was very interested in you know making a story and swimming through a story in which fear was essential, not because of the supernatural ghost or monster thing, but because we are human, we are alive, and we fear all the time. Not only for ghosts or monsters, but because we fear we lose someone we love, we fear someone we love will hurt us. We fear to be abandoned, we fear, you know, we are just full of fear, and also full of desire, full of fear and desire. And I just also by then I wrote Mandibula in 2017, and I by then I was like having this like image in my head. It was very strange because it was like poetic image. I just had in my head this image of a high school girl tied up in a cabin in the woods and looking through a window and seeing or watching a volcano. And like I didn't knew why I had that image, but it was just in my head, like it was you know there living. And I thought I wanted to start the novel with that. And what I did was like answer to myself some questions that were evident by the time, like why she was there, why this cabin in the woods, why the volcano, you know, because the volcano, you know it perfectly, it's a important symbol in the novel, also like the crocodile. I'm very in love with symbols, because I'm in love with very very intense emotions. And I believe symbols work in that way, you know. Volcanoes, they are very clear symbol of fear, death, but also about renovation, and they're a symbol also about the intensity of passions. And so I believe the you know the the way that I just start thinking about Mandibula was with all these things that I'm just throwing you right now in a very chaotic way.
It's funny that you say that you started with just a single image. I think the first time I met you was in Seville, and I think it was for the book presentation for Mandibula, and I remember you said something about like not knowing when you started writing how the book was going to end. I think you said something like,
yeah,
why would I write a book if I knew how it was going to end? And something, my husband was there with me, and we both still talked about that.
yeah, totally.
This idea that the writing process is a process of kind of discovering the story.
Yeah, I think I like to take writing. I take writing very seriously, and because I take it very seriously, I play a lot. So I like that the act of writing. I like it to be for me very, very emotional, and because I believe emotion is a place of knowledge. I don't think knowledge is in one place and emotion is in other. I believe knowledge is the very first place of knowledge, and emotion is the very first place of knowledge. So I like also that the act of writing, I like it to be or have a revelation component. I like mystery, in that way. I think I'm kind of a mystic, because I do like to protect mystery. I love mystery in an aesthetic way, almost, and I do believe that language is a very complex thing that has its lights and has its shadows, and I believe that I like that language in some kind of way reveals me part of the things that I'm writing. That doesn't mean that when I'm writing, I am not knowing what I'm doing. Of course, I know what I'm doing, but I like to work with it step by step in a very conscious way. I don't know how the book is going to end. But in the way I am, working through this narrative building, and the characters are developing with me. And I believe by when I am in the half of writing the novel, in the middle, I already know how the book is going to end. I am not in the shadow just all the time. Just maybe I am working with mystery when I start, because I love it to be like a revelation to me, a revelation of my own obsessions, how it works. I like to give that to the book. Mm-hmm.
I think I get a little bit of that. I mean, translation is different from writing, in that I started translation and I know what the book is. I've read the whole thing, as opposed to you that you start writing and create the book as you go. But I also find that as I'm translating, that practice, I mean, plenty of people have talked about how translation is the closest form of reading, and that's very, very true in my experience. And I find that like the more time I spend translating something, the more layers I see of sentences, and you're very talented at this, of kind of building up different layers to what you're writing, and so using a lot of different techniques that we'll kind of get into in a little bit to create meaning and to kind of play with language and see what language can do. So then I feel like the translation process allows for a little bit of that kind of playing with mystery and revelation that you were just talking about.
Yeah, I do believe that because we both work with language, I do believe that language has that character, of showing itself, but also hiding, and in a sentence, So it's really great. I do believe that, for example, when I am writing narrative, I believe that the separación barrera, how do I say that?
Oh,
like the wall, the
so,
wall, the wall that apparently separates narrative from poetry, or narrative from poetry and essay, literary essay. I do believe that the act of writing just destroys those walls, and everything just comes through like an organic thing, not something that is separated and divided, because writing is not like that, I think.
Yeah, that's some of the things I really like about your writing, is that there are intensive poetic elements to what you're writing, within what we would call narrative, I suppose, and then within your poetry too, there's elements of narrative. I have a question about content, and I'm interested in your experience writing such. I mean, this is a challenging book. I mean, you talked about the desire and the fear that's kind of at the heart of the book, and with that, I think comes a lot of violence, a lot of trauma, which you deal with. I think you deal with these topics beautifully, but it's also difficult to deal with, both writing and translating. And I was curious about your experience with the writing process, however much you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh no, I think it was very intense. For me, writing is an experience that I think for me it has basically two parts, or essential parts. From one side, I think I'm very attracted and obsessed with violence and hurt and things that are really complex and things that I don't have a response to. And I believe that obsession comes because you can think about anything else when something hurts, you can possibly think about something else. When you are in fear and you are scared, you can't think about anything else but how you are scared of something, that is a part, but it's not all in my writing. The other part is, I believe, how I am amazed about some stuff, and how I love some stuff, and how I like to search for beauty, even though we live in a very, very hostile world, I think. So I think because I hurt and because I'm attracted to violence, I search beauty also in my writing. And because I desire, I search beauty. And because I am violent, I search beauty. Like my characters, my characters are very violent, but also they are very violent with others and with themselves, because they are in a very specific moment, in the story. It is a Mandíbula has Jawbone has the form of a thriller in some parts. It seems it's a very easy structure, but actually it's just a structure that helps me to go to very, very difficult emotions and very difficult stuff and scary stuff. And I think that the characters in Mandíbula are very violent because they are in that place that I talked before, that place of desire, in which you have so much strength, but also you're so vulnerable. And I think I love writing these kind of characters, these characters that are in a crisis of their own identities, because when you are in such an intense place of experience, you are in a crisis of your own identity. You make things that you wouldn't even dream that you will do, and you look to your own monsters or your own shadows and that kind of stuff. So I don't know, I think intensity is also dangerous. So when I write, I also like the adrenaline of that feeling that I have as a writer of touching things that are dangerous for myself. Like language for me, it's a very dangerous place, a very violent place. I think writing is violent. Because I know that the word violent and violence, it's like very big, and people get scared when someone just pronunciates the word, but I don't know, etymologically violence means abundance of strength. So everything that has a lot of strength is violent. Love is violent. Writing, of course, if you write with a lot of strength of emotions, it's violent. And also it can be violent to read the book if the book makes you cry or makes you angry, or it's violent. A book is violent also. It can be, I believe art can be violent in a good way, not in a bad way, but in a good way, because sometimes the abundance of strength for ourselves, it makes us feel alive. So and all that was in the book, I think, and in the characters. They are very, very, very much alive, and they are very, very scary because of it,
Well, that's sort of my next question. As reviews start to appear of Jawbone, or people have been writing about Mandibula since it came out. But it's been interesting to see how people respond to our characters, Fernanda, Annelise, and Clara. I think I read one review that suggested that none of these characters are victims, that they're all in their own ways predators. And it surprised me a little bit, because I think this reading saw them all in sort of a negative light, which was very different from my experience of spending so much time with them throughout the translation process. But I felt like empathetic towards all of them, even as they were doing these kind of like horrible and intense, violent things. I was curious, and you've spoken about this already, but I'm curious how you feel about and relate to these characters.
Yeah, I think I'm really not interested neither in reading nor in writing characters that move in a very strict categories of personalities. Like the category of victim is very clear, and it's so clear it doesn't interest me in a literary level. Also, predator is so clear, so full of things that are just transparent that I'm not interested. So I do like to write about characters that can be in some ways victims and also predators or aggressors, because I am interested in this, in that kind of characters. I'm interested in how we can become violent beings. And I think we all think about violence like it's something that is in the other and never in us. And that is like a very, very strange way of cheating to oneself, because we all are violent and we all can do terrible things, just in some time or space. They put us in a very, very, very strange scene or a scenery, and we can do horrible things, all of us. So I don't believe that violence is in others. I believe violence is in me, and also in others in different levels, of course, but it is. So these characters, where they are in a very, very intense place of experience, and that is because their identity is in crisis, like I said, and they do horrible things to one another and to themselves. That doesn't make them bad necessarily. I don't know, we can be bad one day or an entire year we can be horrible persons, and the next year we can do better. So I love how literature, writing, reading just takes you to a place in which you can look to what it is to be a human being, and what it is to be a human being, and these contradictions, and these like things that you wouldn't even think of. That is to be a human being. to be a human being is that you can hug your dog and pet it, and then give a kiss to your daughter, and the next day, you know, work in a camp, a concentration camp, which has happened and is happening all the time, you know, in different places. So I love to work with those kind of characters, you know, those kind of characters that let me, you know, see the matices. How do I say matices?
Like patterns?
See the patterns that are not so clear and strict and, I don't know, black and white categories.
Yeah. Interesting. But a slightly different direction. And this is kind of my last content question before we move more into the specific questions about writing. But I'm interested in your interest in the creepypastas, and how this came to play such an central role in the novel. And I guess maybe real quick for anybody in the audience who doesn't know what creepypastas are, they're horror stories that get cut and pasted and circulated on the internet, and they go viral. And some of them have had millions of views. Slender Man is a really famous one, and they play a really central role in the novel. Annelise is really fascinated with them and starts writing her own. That's a kind of a simplified explanation, but I'm curious how you came to be interested in them.
I think it was by accident, because I was, you know, creating these characters, and these characters are most of the characters of the novel are high school girls, and they are teenagers. They are also horror culture fans. You know, they watch a lot of horror movies, but they also read a lot because they are from rich families, and they have a very strict education that is also very conservative. But about literature, they can read almost anything because they have they can do it. They have the access to all kind of stuff because they are rich, and they have this conservative environment, but nevertheless environment that lets her dare to do whatever. So they watch movies, they read books, they read comics also. And of course, I thought these girls, you know, they are young, they have to have an internet culture. And nowadays, the urban legends that were before, the ones that just makes us be scared, and they are not longer that alive, you know, because we you know, I'm sorry for that, but we are not in this time, you know, getting together around a fire and telling stories. Hopefully we will get to that again, but so these girls, they are from internet culture, and I thought they had to just consume horror from internet also. And I just started to investigate. I knew before what was creepypastas, what were creepypastas, but I hadn't read a lot of creepypastas before. I started to read them when I was writing Jawbone. I knew it was something I was interested in. I was not only interested in the literature narrative of horror, but also in the oral narrative that can be taking place in the internet. So it was really fun because I watched a lot of videos also that were like inspired by creepypastas, and now also the creepypastas are videos that are fake videos, but they are, you know, filmed like amateur filming, and it looks really scary, and sometimes you see a slender man in the woods, and it's really, really scary. And it's really kind of great, So I thought this is going to be interesting. I wanted that Jawbone, because these girls are so fanatic of horror, and they came from a conservative place, like they in horror just they find a place to be free. Also, the school in which they are is very religious, which actually is great because because of religion, they develop a cult because they imitate some kind of religious patterns that they have had for their whole life, and just change the cult and they made a cult of horror, a horror cult, so they had all these instruments to make their own stories.
Yeah, I will say I was not very familiar with creepypastas before working on this, and spent a fair amount of time while doing the translation researching all of the creepypastas, and because a lot of them, you were talking about them in Spanish, but they have circulated quite a bit in English. So I was trying to make sure that I was using the language that's used, that's used in the English versions of these stories. Some of them are very creepy, and some of it, there's some YouTube videos that you talked about in there that I would watch to make sure that the ways that I was describing them in English made sense compared to the videos. I had to be careful about what time of day I think I was working on those sections, but it was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's really scary. I got scared when I was reading creepypastas. I couldn't sleep. It was really, really scary. Also, I was writing Jawbone, and Jawbone has a very, very scary atmosphere that only goes in crescendo with every page. But it has a very scary atmosphere because the characters are scared, and they are it's kind of like the characters are hunting each other in some parts of the book. I thought it was really, really pertinent.
Yeah. I have a question about craft, and to return to language, and I think maybe we'll do one or two more questions and then move into audience Q&A. So I see questions popping up in the Q&A. But you have a lot of, I guess, quirks maybe, or techniques in your writing that are different from anything else I've ever read. This definitely came up in the editing process as we tried to figure out what would work in English. What would work in English. But I was curious about your approach. So use of hyphens is one that I know we talked about a little bit. But there's a lot of hyphenated phrases throughout. The high school for girls, which is used in English and Spanish, mandíbula. And then things Fernanda would use it in the conversations. She would say, hacer esto, que usted ya sabe, do this. I don't remember how I translated it into English. But you create a lot of these kind of phrases with hyphens that are really interesting. So I'm curious about that. And then I'm curious about your use of formatting. There's a couple chapters where you have lines that are justified to the right that give it a much more, it makes it look more like poetry on the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that with the words that get together, hyphenize, how do I say it? Hyphenated words. I believe that I did that because sometimes the characters make concepts about phrases. They just make that a phrase can be a concept, like a word, almost like a category, like we were talking about. So in that, by doing that, I think I made that for the reader to feel that this phrase is not just a phrase, it's like something that has a character, of a concept together, and also sometimes has irony in it, you know, like some emphasis in a way. And also by throwing like sentences and justifying them to the right, I believe that that starts to happen in a moment in the book where the third person is like invaded by the way of thinking and the language of the characters that are in a very, very delirious mode, you know, in a very strange anemic mode and mood. And also the language just becomes more erratic and more in delirium, you know. And I think in that place when the language is just like the language of the mind, is then it is poetic. And in that way of throwing the sentence, it also it changed the way you read it, because space in a page makes rhythm and makes sound. So if you have something change in that place, for you as a reader, it changes. It sounds different, but also it shows that you are reading something that not only in the language but in the form, it is becoming kind of it's becoming the thought of the character and the way it thinks in a poetic way, but also in a very oniric way also, how the thoughts just go from one place to another. I thought that was fun for me to do, because there are chapters perfectly in which the third person is just invaded by the dialogues of the present that the third person is narrating. So sometimes the third person in some character, in some chapters, is narrating something, and just like that, the dialogues just come across the narration, and not only the dialogues but also what the characters are thinking. So you have in the same place, in the same time, the narration of the facts, the things that people are saying just in the middle, and also the things the characters are thinking, and that, I think it was fun for me, but also just contributes to the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's another technique, the way that you kind of intersplice various like narratives or dialogues. It'll be one sentence of one narrative and then another sentence of another narrative, and goes back and forth. And I find those really interesting to read and to play with. That ended up being, I think, one of our last big translation challenges. It was one of those late chapters in which it's almost at the end, and the girls it's like a flashback, and the girls are at a pool and they're listening to lyrics come from Disney songs, and in the Spanish there's like the whole song, which is really cool, because it's this way of that the written word creates the atmosphere. I mean, if you're familiar with the songs, then you read the lyrics and you've got these songs playing as you're reading this, and it creates this really cool effect. In English, they got a little bit more complicated because of copyright issues, and we couldn't necessarily include an entire Disney song. So that ended up being, I think, a challenge. We ended up putting in, so the Disney song came from The Little Mermaid, and it was comes from a fairy tale, and so ended up substituting lines from the fairy tale that more or less corresponded with the song lyrics. It doesn't work quite the same way, but I thought it ended up being it created some interesting parallels between the Ursula figure and the mother figure and the Marie, but there's some like really kind of creepy imagery, and I think there was even a crocodile in there, but that ended up being an interesting translation challenge.
Yeah, I believe that you were very creative right there, and I am so thankful for you because of that, because it was really difficult for me when we just talk with also Coffee House, and we just figure out that we couldn't put the lyrics that were actually from Toy Story and The Little Mermaid. You know. Also because I would like to say to also to the people that are listening right now that because the book has this structure that it feels like a thriller, and because there is a kidnap in the first chapter, and then all the book is about trying to learn why this girl is kidnapped in a cabin in the woods by her teacher. So the book just like goes and flows, making chapters of the past, so you can like construct the puzzle, and then chapters of the present in which you know what is happening in the cabin with this girl. So because we have been talking about that, and now about the lyrics at the end, which is a very long flashback when these girls were little girls, 8-year-old girls actually, and they just have watched these movies, and they have like this in their heads. It feels like it's a novel about, I don't know how to say it in English, novela juvenil, a teenage novel. I don't know.
Like a young. Somebody asked me if it was a young adult novel.
And actually, I don't think, and actually, it is not. So, and it just has this structure, and then it talks about things that are really dark and complicated and complex, about passion between women, and not only best friends, but also best friends that feel like Siamese or twin sisters, and also about mothers and daughters, and also about teachers and students, which have a relationship similar to mothers and daughters. And it's really like I don't want to sell my novel like it's a juvenile a teenager novel, and then like people going to throw the novel into my face like you cheat on me. Because it isn't, I don't want to cheat, it isn't. And I think you were very creative in that chapter, and I was really happy with the work that you did. I think it really works.
Well, thank you. Yes, this might not be the most appropriate novel for a 15-year-old to read.
No, I think teenagers can read them. I have readers that are teenagers actually, but most of my readers are adults.
Yeah.
And this is a harsh novel, yeah, in so many ways. It seems when we talk about the characters and the story that is like a story for a teenage story, and actually it is, and it's just a structure. I like actually to work with the structures that seem like pop or very easy following structures. And I think I do cheat my readers because I kind of make them think that the structure is easy, and then well, not that reading it is easy, but the topics, I believe, and the way I put the topics in there, it is kind of difficult, I believe, not in a bad way, but in a very intense way.
I think that's fair.
Emotional way.
Yeah. We've got a couple cute audience Q&A. Let's do maybe 5 minutes of those, and we'll close with, I changed slightly, but we'll close with the reading maybe. Yeah. We have one question from Justin Walls. I think this is a good one. It's one I wanted to ask, but didn't get a chance to. So he says, the novel has such a rich polyphonic quality. Did you do any particular research in order to create the overlapping dialogue and distinctive speech patterns of between the different characters?
The research, it came from memory. I study in not a high school like the one those girls go, but I do know how people of high class Ecuadorian, Guayaquil, which is my city, is, you know, the high class there, almost all is religious and almost all is opposed. Ecuador is a very Catholic country, but the ones that really have money are the ones that are opposite. So I know those environments, and I know them very well. I haven't been in high school, an opposite high school, and neither Catholic high school, but I know how they are, how they talk, how they express themselves. So I kind of use memory from when I was a teenager and I had friends from those places. And also I ask a little bit of help for my sister, which is younger. I have a younger sister. So, but then, yeah. And the overlapping dialogue, like you ask, I believe that I just went through it. I didn't plan for it to be like that in that chapter. Actually, the chapter in which, you know, the Annelise and Fernanda go to this party from university guys, you know, and they go to this party. That was a chapter that I wrote after I end the first draft of the novel. I read the whole thing and I thought I needed this chapter, like the novel needed this chapter, and I wrote it. And when I started writing, then it just went like that. So I went for it. You know, like I like to be playful when I write.
Did you write them in order, like, did you write the chapter? And this one you say you wrote after, but did you more or less write in the order that the chapters appear?
I don't think that exactly, but kind of. When I ended the second draft, that was the final draft actually. I like put all the chapters in the floor like a crazy person, and I started to like play Tetris with the chapters, like knowing the possible combinations, how to put this chapter next to what and when, just thinking about the tension, you know, how to construct in a very nice way the tension of the book. Which was very important for me, because of the chapters just are they make like ellipses. I don't know, ellipses of time. Actually can play a lot with the order of the chapters. So I did play with it later. So it is not in the book. It's not like I wrote in order. I play with it.
Yeah, interesting. When I translated it, I wanted to be able to get really into each of the voices because the different narrative voices are so distinct. I wanted to make sure to be able to really focus on them. So I started out and I did I think I started with the Glada chapters and did all of the Glada, which was kind of intense. Her writing those chapters are so intense, like the language is dense and yeah. And then I think I moved on to, I think the chapters with the girls together, and then I moved on to the present tense cabin chapters, and then kind of put everything into place. And so it's this weird experience of not necessarily seeing how the pieces fit together in order until I was doing the second draft and then had it all together.
I would have done that if I would have been translating this book. Exactly, because I think it's the best way. But when I write, I do feel like I like to change. All my novels have chapters with distinct voices and form, or even formats. They change. So I do like to go to one thing and another. Like I didn't wrote the chapters of the cabin in the woods. I didn't wrote them all together. I was writing them, but in between I was writing also the chapters with Fernanda and and her therapy. I don't know, how do I say psychoanalyst?
Yeah, psychoanalyst.
Her analyst. So
Mm-hmm.
and also other chapters, like I wrote it in a very chaotic way.
Yeah. And one other thing you said that you talked to your sister some, who's younger, about getting for her input on language. I felt like I did that a little bit too. I was teaching a translation class when I was working on this, and the undergrads, so 18 to 22-year-olds. And there were a couple of times that I came into class and I was like, here's this passage that I'm working on. Would you all say something like this? Does this make sense to you all? Ended up being, I think it was fun for them to get to be involved, and I appreciated their feedback.
I think it was fun for me, actually. Those were like the chapters that were easy for me to write in some kind of level. Like it was hard for me to write the chapters where the language wasn't imitating the voices of the girls, but it was the language of the mind, which was more complex, more symbolic, more scary, because language makes the atmosphere of a book. And in a way, I always remember this sentence, phrase of Lovecraft, in which he said that language, the atmosphere, not that horror is the atmosphere. No, that was the thing that he said. Horror is the atmosphere of a book. And I always remember that sentence, and I think, horror is the atmosphere of a book. Atmosphere is horror, but also language is atmosphere. So those chapters were really, really challenging for me to write, because I wanted like them to sound good, but also sound kind of scary, and also in a confusing way, but not so confusing that you can understand what is happening, because also I am a narrator, and it has to show up the story. You have to be able to learn what is happening, So it was challenging.
Yeah. But I think all of that, and this is to answer Clara's question here at the end, that somebody asked, Clara asked, what drew me to translating this book? And I think everything that you've been speaking about this book, the challenges and the intensity of the language and the intensity of the themes, is what drew me to translating the book. Should we end with one final reading? So, do you want to do chapter 12?
Chapter 12, okay.
Do you want to do it? There's these kind of like one-off chapters that are dialogues. They're either between A and F or between A and C. You want to do it in Spanish and then in English?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm going to read it just like the dialogue. I'm not going to say the letter that announce who is speaking. Okay. ¿Cuál es el único animal que nace de su hija y alumbra a su madre? Ah, es un acertijo. ¿Y de dónde lo escuchaste? Lo escuché de Miss Clara de Huevo. Miss Clara como el agua. Miss Clara como el cristal. Lo escuché y dije adiós, pero esa no era la respuesta correcta. It's so creepy. Miss Clara dice que la respuesta correcta existe. It's so fucking creepy.
Do you have the English copy with you?
No, I don't.
Okay, then I'll just read it. All right. So chapter 12. What's the only animal that's born from its daughter and gives birth to its mother? What? It's a riddle. Where did you hear it? I heard it from Miss Clara fried butter. Miss Clara clear as water. Miss Clara crystal clear. I listened and said God, but that wasn't the right answer. So creepy. Miss Clara says there's a right answer. It's so fucking creepy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was so much fun. Thank you both so much for doing this. Monica, thank you for staying up with us. This was a blast. Those of you at home, please consider purchasing a copy of Jawbone from Community Bookstore. I just posted a link in the chat. It's electric, it's creepy, it's fun. You're gonna love it. We hope to see you at another virtual event very soon. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great evening, everyone.
Have a great evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you,
Yes.
Sarah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Have a good night.
Bye.